Most of the time, life had treated me pretty well, at least until that particular day rolled around. Who could have guessed that something as ordinary as my PA, Joyce, leaving her book behind at a restaurant would end up stirring up so much trouble for me? I got back from lunch and saw Joyce at her computer, muttering curse words under her breath. I figured her computer had frozen up again. Seemed like some people just have a knack for making Windows crash by looking at it sideways, and Joyce was one of them. She always claimed Bill Gates must have it in for her personally. But, truth be told, she'd always have every program and document known to man open at the same time, so it was no wonder her system struggled. Curious, I asked her what was making her so mad. I thought maybe a couple of hits on Control-Alt-Delete would get her sorted out, like usual. But Joyce told me she'd lost the book she'd been reading. She was trying to hunt down another copy since she'd really gotten into it, but apparently it was out of print and not even the local libraries had it. Turns out, Joyce had picked it up at a second-hand bookstore, so now she was extra irritated about losing it. She was sure she'd never find out how the story ended. It's a mystery novel, she told me. Honestly, the book isn't even that great, kind of drags on, if you ask me. But now I just have to know how it wraps up. After that, I didn't give the whole thing much thought for a few days. Then, that weekend, my wife Sarah started tearing apart the living room while I was just trying to watch the football game on TV. "Did I do something to upset you, honey?" I asked her. "No, why would you say that?" "It's just hard to focus on Manu when you're flipping the place upside down," I said. "Sorry, but I can't find my book. I had it earlier, and now it's gone." "Oh, for crying out loud, not another lost book?" "Joyce has been complaining about losing her book all week," I grumbled, a bit of an exaggeration, but sometimes you just say what pops into your head. "What book did Joyce lose?" "I don't really know. Something about a Spanish doctor or something like that." "Oh no, not a Spanish doctor in Paris?" "Yeah, I think that's what she called it, but I wasn't really paying attention." "Have you read it? Can you tell her how it ends?" "I wish I could help, but it's been ages since I picked that one up, way before Christina was born. I don't think I ever finished it. It dragged on too much for my taste, so I gave up. But why don't you give her my copy? She can see how it ends for herself. It should be in one of those boxes you put up in the attic." "Great. One of those boxes," she said, as if that was a quick fix. Sarah's a huge book lover and never seems to want to part with any of them. After 18 years of marriage, we've got at least a box for every year stashed up in that attic, probably more books up there than at the local library. "It'll take me a month to dig through all those boxes," I complained. "Don't be ridiculous, Mike. I was reading it when I got pregnant with Christina. The boxes are all marked with the year you put them up there. You just need the right one." So, Sunday morning had me climbing up the attic ladder, rooting around until I found the right box. Felt pretty pleased with myself when I finally found the book and slipped it into my briefcase. Joyce had been my right hand at work for ages, always helping me out. I looked forward to handing it to her on Monday, just the book, mind you. Folks sure do have wild imaginations. When Monday rolled around and Joyce came in for our meeting, she caught me grinning. "What's that goofy smile about? My slip showing or something?" she teased. "Nope, I've got a little surprise for you," I told her. "Oh, great, is it my raise?" "You wish. If only it were that easy. Getting money out of accounts is like pulling teeth." "No, here, A Spanish Doctor in Paris. That's the book you've been missing, right?" "Wow, thanks, Mike. That's really thoughtful of you. Where'd you find it?" "It wasn't me. Sarah had a copy from years back. I just spent most of yesterday hunting it down." A little exaggeration, sure, but it earned me a kiss on the cheek. Just the cheek, let's be clear. "Thanks, Mike. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you," Joyce said, smiling. "No, you've got it backwards, Joyce. I'd be lost without you." As Joyce flipped through the book, probably looking for where she'd left off, a little card fluttered out and landed on the floor. "Looks like Sarah left her bookmark in here," Joyce said, picking it up and setting it on my desk. "I think she gave up on that book, too slow for her," I told her. "Slow is right, but I just have to know who the killer is. Thanks again, Mike." Joyce left me to get on with my day, and I didn't give that card another thought, at least not until I was cleaning up my desk later on. I picked it up, glanced at it, and tossed it in the trash without thinking much about it. But you know how sometimes you read something and it takes a minute to sink in? That's what happened to me. Suddenly, it hit me, and I dug the card back out of the trash. It was a little reminder card, the kind hotels hand out. It had the hotel name, a room number, the date, April 23, 1986, and the guest names, Mr. and Mrs. M.J. Garrett. That's me, Michael Jeffrey Garrett, and my wife. Here's the weird part, the hotel was the Majestic, way out on the edge of town, but as far as I could remember, I'd never set foot in that place, let alone stayed there. So how did our names end up on that card? Mildly curious, I tucked it into the pocket of my jacket, figuring I'd ask Sarah about it later, but then, as usual, I forgot all about it. Time went by, and about a month later, I asked Sarah to take a couple of my suits to the cleaners. One of those suits had the hotel card in the pocket. That evening, I came home and found all the usual pocket junk laid out on my dresser, the stuff Sarah always pulls out before dropping the clothes off. As I sorted through the old receipts and ticket stubs, I remembered the hotel card. But it wasn't there. Hey Sarah, when you emptied my pockets this morning, did you see a hotel card from the Majestic in there? No, Michael, just the stuff I put on your dresser. That's when something clicked. Sarah had never called me Michael unless she was upset or annoyed, usually it was just Mike. It's a little thing you notice after being married so long, the little changes in tone or habits. She answered too quickly, didn't pause or look away, just straight up denied it. That's when I started feeling uneasy. She'd made a mistake, she slipped up and let something show. She must have known the card was important, something she didn't want me to see, which is why she took it out of my pocket. I decided to play it cool. Oh, I thought I had a room card from the Majestic mixed in with all that stuff. Just wondered if you knew where it came from, that's all. Where would something like that come from? Sarah asked. That's what I was wondering. We've never stayed there. The card was tucked in that book of yours I gave to Joyce. Just got me curious since we've never been to that place. I must have gotten it from my brother. Remember he and Stephanie stayed there when they came for Christina's christening? The George Inn was full, so you had to book them into the Majestic. Oh yeah, that's right. There was a big conference in town, everywhere was booked. I put it on the credit card since they wouldn't hold the room otherwise. Her story sounded believable enough, so I let it drop, for now. I knew letting Sarah think I bought her explanation would work in my favor. But the date on that card kept nagging at me. Sarah said she was reading that book before Christina was born. Christina was born on January 20, 1987, and she was 3 months old at her christening. But the hotel card was dated a year earlier, and by then that book would have already been in the attic. Plus, the next morning, first thing, I called Joyce into my office. Hey Joyce, what do you do with my old desk diaries? I keep them in my drawer for a year, just in case we need them. Then they go down to archives. Why do you ask? Could you contact the archives and see if they still have the ones from 1986 and 1987? Wow, Mike, that's ancient history. I didn't even work for you back then. What's up? It's personal, Joyce. I just need to check on something. I'll go down myself in a bit and see what I can dig up, if you want. About an hour later, Joyce came back and dropped a couple of old diaries onto my desk. She gave me this curious look, but didn't say anything and left me to it. Once she was gone, I started flipping through the pages, searching for April 23, 1986. Turns out it was a Wednesday, and just as I'd worried, that was the day I'd left for Germany on a work trip. I didn't get back until the evening of the 24th. Just out of curiosity, I also poked around for any notes about Christina's christening, tried to see if there was a record of me booking a room at the Majestic. I was sure I had, but I couldn't find any mention of it, and besides, the christening had been on a weekend. That hotel card was definitely dated April 23rd. I was almost certain it said 1986 and not 1987. I double-checked the calendar and saw that April 23, 1987, was a Thursday. That wouldn't line up, because the christening was on a Saturday, though I couldn't remember the exact date offhand. I was still sitting there, kind of lost in thought and staring at the open diaries, when Joyce came back with a cup of coffee for me. What's up, boss? You look pretty deep in thought. You remember that book I gave you, and that card that dropped out? It had my name on it, but I swear I've never stayed at the Majestic. So I got curious. And now it turns out, according to my own notes, I was out of the country on that date. I just can't figure out how Sarah ended up with that card, or why. What was the exact date on the card? Joyce asked, grabbing the diary from me. April 23, 1986, I told her. You sure about that? Yeah, I'm positive. And for some reason, after I put the card in my jacket pocket, it just disappeared. Joyce started scanning through the diary and stopped when she noticed something. Hey, what are all these stars in the margins for? I glanced over and realized what she meant. Oh, Well, Sarah and I were trying to have a baby back then. Those stars, they're kind of like our own little scoreboard. Joyce laughed. Wow, you two really went for it. You know there's such a thing as trying too hard, right? She flipped through more pages. Looks like from the 10th to the 17th, there are no stars, so I guess that was Sarah's time of the month. Then you two made up for lost time, 2 stars a day until the 23rd, which I guess is when you left for Germany. None on the 24th since you were away, but then you really made up for it after you got home. Thinking back, it all came rushing back to me. Yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember. It was ages ago, but Sarah practically ran me ragged after I got home from that trip. Guess it worked, because she finally got pregnant that month. My voice kind of trailed off as the reality of what that hotel card might mean started to hit me. Now, don't get ahead of yourself, Mike, Joyce said, seeing the look on my face. But she was thinking the same thing I was. You have any other theory for why that card vanished from your pocket, and why Sarah claims she never saw it? She must have pulled it out herself. I don't have a better explanation, Mike. But you really shouldn't jump to conclusions. You need to talk to Sarah carefully. If you're wrong and you accuse her of something without any real proof, you could wreck your marriage over nothing. Joyce rubbed her temples, looking a bit stressed. Then she picked up the phone and dialed someone. Hey Martin, how far back do your client records go over there? She asked. After a pause, can you check for an MJ Garrett? Another pause. Yeah, at a local address. Only twice? She started jotting notes. Any idea how those bookings were made or paid for? Okay. What about a Mrs. S. Garrett? A final pause. All right, thanks, Martin. I owe you one. And yes, dinner at 7 tomorrow sounds good. Bye. She hung up and looked back at me. Martin's the manager at the Majestic, we go way back. Luckily they digitized their records a while ago. Your name shows up twice, April 23, 1986, for one night, double room, booked by phone and paid in cash. Then again, May 1, 1987, also one night, booked by phone and paid with American Express, probably your card. You're not on their mailing list since you live nearby. So the date on that card was legit? Looks like it, Joyce said, not looking too happy about it. I was hoping you had it wrong. What now, Mike? This was a long time ago, and you've been happily married all these years. Have I? I said quietly. If what I'm thinking is true, then Christina might not be my daughter at all. It feels like my whole life could have been built on a lie. Come on, Mike. Sarah loves you, I can see it. There's gotta be another explanation. She wouldn't do that to you. Well, something definitely happened that night, something Sarah's been hiding all this time. I can't just keep wondering if Christina's really my child. I don't know how I'll live with the doubt. And now I can't help but wonder, has Sarah been hiding more from me all these years? Back when I met Sarah, she was a wild one, always out, always up for a party. But I was no saint either, and honestly, that's part of what made things exciting at first. We both settled down after we got together, or at least I thought we did. Now I wasn't so sure anymore. You know, there's a pretty simple way to get answers these days, Joyce said. Just get a DNA test. Yeah, and how am I supposed to pull that off without Sarah getting suspicious? Easier than you think, Joyce said. My brother's doing some research at the university, they're collecting DNA samples for some big ancestry project. Trying to figure out where people's families come from, Vikings, Normans, that sort of thing. I'll have him reach out and ask you to participate. You can invite Sarah and Christina, too. If Sarah objects, well, that's a sign right there that she might be hiding something. That's not a bad idea, Joyce. Can you set it up? Plus. The next evening, at dinner, I brought up the DNA research project that Joyce's brother was working on and told Sarah and Christina that we'd been invited to take part. As soon as I mentioned it, Sarah stiffened right up. After thinking about it, she said she didn't want any of us involved, not me, not her, and not Christina. Her reason was all about privacy. She said the government already had too much information on us. Even when I explained that it was just an academic study, she argued that all universities work for the government in the end. I didn't push the issue. I just dropped it, and let her believe I agreed. But inside, I knew I had my answer. Sarah's reaction told me everything I needed to know. What she didn't realize was that things were already in motion. After explaining everything to her brother, Joyce had set it up so he could run the analysis for me. He said he could get what he needed from hair samples, even though that's not how they usually do it, but he had access to the equipment. 3 weeks later, I told Sarah we were going out for dinner on Friday night. She was excited and a little puzzled because I wouldn't say where we were headed. I couldn't tell if she sensed that something big was about to happen, but I did notice that when we arrived at the Majestic's restaurant, she became unusually quiet. "Why did you pick this place?" she asked, clearly uneasy. "I heard from Joyce that her boyfriend manages the place and she says it's nice. I figured, why not give it a shot?" I told her, hoping that would put her mind at ease. She seemed to relax a bit, and honestly, we had a pretty good meal together. But as we were leaving and I steered her toward the elevators instead of the exit, I saw the confusion and anxiety start to build again. By the time we stepped out on the 4th floor and reached room 419, she was actually trembling. She didn't say anything, and only gently resisted when I guided her inside. I helped her sit down, and she pretty much collapsed into a chair. "Okay, Sarah, it's time to stop pretending. I know you've been in this room before. Are you ready to tell me the whole story? Or do I walk out of here tonight on my own?" She looked up at me, genuinely frightened, and didn't say a word. So, I pulled out an envelope from my pocket and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "It's the DNA test results, Sarah. I went ahead and had the test done anyway. Want to guess what they say?" Panic flashed across her face. "But, they can't. You are Christina's father. I made sure you would be." Her voice faded, breaking down into tears. "Can you explain what you mean by that, Sarah?" But she couldn't say anything, just kept crying with her face in her hands. That's when there was a knock at the door. It threw me off, but I opened it to find Joyce and Martin standing there. "Sorry, Mike. I thought you might need someone to keep things calm. Martin will wait in the hall, but if you don't mind, I think I should be here just in case you lose your cool," Joyce said. "Sure, Joyce, come on in. I don't think we'll need Martin, but thanks anyway, buddy," I told him. Martin nodded, but from his look, I doubted he'd really go far. Joyce took a seat next to Sarah, while I sat down on the bed. "Sarah, I know Mike is technically my boss, but both of you are friends to me. I might not know everything, but I do know a lot of what's going on. I want to stay neutral. If this turns into a shouting match, maybe I can help," Joyce said, reaching out and holding Sarah's hand. They exchanged a little smile. Honestly, I was nervous about Joyce being there, since she and Sarah had always gotten along so well. But maybe it was for the best. "Are you ready to tell me what happened, Sarah? Or am I leaving here alone tonight?" She just shook her head, crying, "No, please, don't." At that point, my patience was running thin, and maybe it was good Joyce was there to keep the peace. "Okay, Sarah, let me lay out what I know. Turns out, in 1986, this hotel wasn't very high-tech, everything was handwritten. Martin was nice enough to dig up the booking paperwork for this room. I pulled out a photocopy. It's a bit hard to read, but here's what happened. On the morning of April 21st, a woman called and booked this very room for the night of the 23rd under the name Mrs. S. Garrett. But they told her they needed a credit card, and the booking changed to Mr. M.J. Garrett with my American Express card. You had a duplicate of my card back then, didn't you?" She nodded, barely meeting my eyes. That night, a couple had dinner in the restaurant downstairs and charged it to this room. At 8:30 p.m., an international phone call was made from here to the hotel I was staying at in Germany. I actually remember getting that call. You told me you were at a neighbor's, returning my call, and you were counting on me being predictable." Sarah was silent, still crying. "The next morning, only one breakfast was charged to this room. Any idea why just one?" I said, trying to keep my tone even. "At 9 a.m., a man named Forrester paid for the room by check. The notes said he was going to pay cash, but maybe the dinner and room service added up. He was a police sergeant, they needed to check his ID. How many other times did you meet up with him, Sarah?" I asked, not even wanting to say anything worse. "That's not fair, Mike." Joyce broke in, but I kept going, needing answers. Sarah finally looked up at me, her eyes red. "What do you want me to say?" "I want the truth. You had an affair with this Forrester guy in this room while I was out of the country. 9 months later, Christina was born. Were you trying to get pregnant by him?" She shook her head fiercely. "No, never. I took every precaution, I had protection, made him use protection, too." "So you're saying you did sleep with him, then?" She nodded, quietly. "I can't deny it, not with all the evidence you have." "But why? Did you love him? Was this something that went on for a long time?" Sarah almost laughed through her tears. "Love him? No, I hated that man. He forced me into it, Mike. I brought a recorder and got everything he said that night, just to protect myself. I needed to book the room first so I could set up. He was trying to blackmail me, and I wanted to stop him from ever threatening me again. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. He blackmailed you? She nodded, yes. I wish I'd gone to the police, but I was young and scared. Jenny, she went to the police when he tried it on her, but I didn't know how things worked back then. They kept it all private, so you never knew I had to testify in court against him. My head was spinning, but honestly, hearing it was blackmail lifted a weight from my shoulders. If Sarah had been trapped and not willing, maybe I could forgive her for what happened. I walked over and hugged her while she sobbed in my arms. But what about Christina? And the DNA results? She asked, barely above a whisper. The results say Christina is mine, Sarah. I guess all your precautions worked. She pulled back and looked at me, confused. But you let me think. I just needed you to be honest with me, Sarah. The DNA test was a bluff, I had to know the truth. But now I have to ask. What on earth did Forrester have on you, that you felt you had no choice? She dropped her head, obviously struggling. Do you really want to know? I nodded. Yes, I do. And please, no more secrets. I'll be checking everything, so I need the truth. Sarah pulled away from my arms and settled back into her chair. I sat down on the bed, just trying to process what was happening. She took a deep breath, clearly fighting back more tears. This goes back to before we were married. You've seen those old photos of me and Jenny working at those summer camps for kids in America, right? We did that 2 years in a row. She stopped, covering her face for a moment, her voice trembling. I don't even know how to explain this. It still embarrasses me after all these years. She wiped her eyes, then went on. At the end of camp, they'd give us up to a month before we had to fly home. That first year, Jenny and I joined some other British girls, and we all drove down to Florida. Those 4 weeks were a blast, kind of made up for all the hard work. I nodded, remembering the old stories. But it's the second summer that I never really told you about. That year, Jenny and I were the only Brits on staff. We got close to 2 American girls and a Canadian. After camp, we piled into one of the girls' cars and drove out to the coast near Atlanta. We ended up spending way more money than we'd planned, and soon we were all practically broke. One of the American girls, Michelle, said she knew of a place we could stay for free. Sarah paused, shaking her head. Looking back, we should have known better. Michelle was a bit of a wild card. She took us to this big country club hotel, and when we got there were all these girls in swimsuits by the pool. Michelle told us it was just a private gambling club for rich people, and that the owners liked to have pretty girls around to keep things lively. We were naive, but she made it sound harmless. She sniffed and continued. On Friday, we hung out by the pool in our bikinis. Some guests chatted us up, but I didn't think anything of it. Guys were always flirting back then. That night, the men played cards and drank at the bar. Most of them paired off with one girl or another, but Jenny and I went to bed alone. Saturday was pretty much the same, but there were even more men around. I met a guy named Tony. He was young and charming, not like the others. We spent the evening talking, dancing, and swimming at midnight. It all felt so natural, and I ended up in bed with him. You know, I've always been honest about having a past before we met, but this was different. It was just a holiday fling. She took another deep breath. Then, around 3 a.m, everything went crazy. Tony jumped out of bed and rushed out after hearing some shouting. When he came back, he told me to get dressed quick. Jenny had been hurt. I found her downstairs with the paramedics. She had some cuts and bruises. The police arrived and asked who attacked her, but didn't seem interested in catching him. They just kept asking if she was sure. Sarah's voice got even softer. Jenny and I ended up at the hospital, and soon after, the police took us to the station. We thought it was to make a statement about her assault. Instead, they charged us both with prostitution. We couldn't believe it. We weren't prostitutes. She shook her head in disbelief. A defense lawyer showed up and told us to plead guilty, said if we did, we'd just get fined and deported. He claimed there were witnesses who would testify we'd propositioned them, and 2 men ready to swear they'd paid us for sex on Friday. Jenny's injuries? The official story was she'd fallen down the stairs running from the cops. We were stunned, but the lawyer said pleading guilty was our only way out. She glanced up at me, eyes watery. Later, Tony came by. He told us some powerful politicians were there that night. He wouldn't vouch for us in court, said whoever could alter police records was too dangerous to mess with. He told us to plead guilty, that he'd pay our fines and drive us to the airport. Sarah was visibly struggling to keep her composure. That morning, we were rushed through court. Our so-called lawyer pleaded guilty for us and the judge fined us. Next thing we knew, Tony drove us to the airport, handed us our luggage, and told us not to come back. Before we boarded, someone else told us our records would keep us out of the US, and the London embassy would never give us visas again. She let out a long sigh. That's why I always refused to take the kids to Disney World when you suggested it. If I tried to go back, I'd get denied, and you'd wonder why. I just couldn't face telling you about all of this. I asked, so that's what Forrester had on you? That's why you let him blackmail you? She nodded. He somehow got hold of the police records from America. He threatened to send them to you and to both our families. I knew your parents never really approved of me. I was terrified they'd find out. I just shook my head, taking it all in. Sarah, what did you think would happen? That I'd divorce you? She nodded, looking ashamed. Yes, I was scared you'd leave me. We hadn't been married long, and I was desperate. I didn't even tell Jenny about the blackmail. She was smarter. She went straight to the police when Forrester tried to blackmail her. When she told me, I admitted I'd already given in. She was furious with me but convinced me to go to the police too. I handed over the recording I'd made of Forrester and they said they'd charge him. I was terrified about the publicity, but they promised to keep my name out of it. I nodded, feeling some of my anger fade. So what happened to Forrester? When he found out he was being charged with blackmail and attempted assault, and with trying the same thing on Jenny, he pled guilty. They told me he did it hoping for a lighter sentence. I tried to stay gentle, even as I asked, but why did you record him in the first place? She gave a sad half smile. Because even if I was too scared to go to the police at first, I wasn't completely naive. I figured he'd try to pressure me again. The tape was my insurance. She continued, a couple weeks after, he called me wanting to meet again. I played him the tape over the phone and told him if he ever tried to blackmail me or anyone again, I'd take it to the police. And he left you alone after that? Sarah shook her head. Not exactly. Remember that burglary we had in '86? I'm sure that was him looking for the tape. For a while, I was nervous about what he'd do, but then Jenny called and said he'd tried the same thing with her and she'd gone straight to the police. I tried to process it all. What about Tony? Did you ever see or hear from him again? She shook her head. No, but I've seen him on TV. Years ago, I caught a glimpse of him at a big political convention, one of those where they pick the presidential candidate. I changed the channel and saw the same clip again. It was definitely him in the background. I let out a slow breath. Now that you say it, I remember that. You suddenly got really interested in American politics, which was out of character for you. She gave a sad little laugh. Now you know why. After everything that happened, I just couldn't trust any of those people. One of them assaulted Jenny, then used his influence to have us arrested, and blocked us from coming back. Who'd ever believe our side if Jenny tried to make a fuss? And then Forrester used those charges to try and control me. Sarah started crying again, but I could see she was letting go of a burden she'd carried for years. I sat there, just thinking through everything she'd told me. She was right, my parents never really approved of her, and I'd never realized how much that must have weighed on her, especially with everything she'd been through. Joyce cleared her throat, getting both our attention. Well, Mike, Sarah's told her side. Now it's your turn. You can't just keep her waiting forever. I nodded, thinking it over. Is Martin still out there? I asked Sarah. She got up, opened the door, and Martin poked his head in. Martin, you have any other rooms available tonight? He smiled. Plenty. It's a slow night. Any particular kind? I looked over at Sarah. I was thinking maybe the honeymoon suite. I think my wife deserves a room with better memories. What do you say, Sarah? She didn't answer. She just rushed over and hugged me so hard she nearly knocked me onto the bed. Honestly, I'm not even sure when Joyce and Martin left, but I hope they took the hint and gave us some privacy. Epilogue. Looking back, I realized I could come to terms with the fact that Sarah had spent that one night with Forrester. What took me longer to get over was learning about Sarah's conviction in America. I guess it's just something I had to wrestle with. At some point, though, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to track down the police officer who'd handled the case against Forrester, not that I was totally honest about why I wanted to talk to him. Part of me just wanted a little personal payback. The officer told me Forrester hadn't exactly had an easy time in prison. Being an ex-cop, especially one who hadn't made many friends on the force, didn't do him any favors. Turns out, somewhere along the line, someone, probably a guy Forrester had locked up years ago, got to him. He was beaten so badly that now he's basically a vegetable, stuck in a nursing home for good. But what really stuck with me was what the officer said about Sarah and Jenny's story. Apparently, their account of being set up on those phony prostitution charges got him thinking. Months later, while working with an FBI agent, he shared the story. The agent must have found it just as strange, because after he got back to the States, he did some digging and came back with news. The FBI guy said he checked out the country club where it all went down. According to him, it wasn't the kind of place the police would ever raid for prostitution. If anything shady was going on, the management would have just quietly ushered the girls out the back instead of causing a scene and bringing in bad press. He even joked that half the women working there were probably in on the game anyway. But here's the thing that raised his eyebrows the most: the files from Sarah and Jenny's case were sealed by the original judge. When he tried to get access to them, his own bosses put the squeeze on him to back off. He told the officer he was sure Sarah and Jenny had been set up, framed to keep them quiet. I still think about all this sometimes, and it makes me wonder how many other stories like Sarah's are out there, buried and forgotten. But at least now, I know the truth. And the truth, however rough, was a whole lot better than living in doubt.